You know, Al Gore is not the first person to actually win more popular votes but still lose the White House. Well, a new book describes all the times it's happened before. It is called The Runner Up Presidency. A short time ago, our own Andrew Whitman, he spoke with its author, Mark Weston.
Mark Weston, your book, The Runner Up Presidency, is about presidents who have been elected despite losing the popular vote. How many times has that happened in our history?
It has happened 4 times. John Quincy Adams, Rutherford B. Hayes, Benjamin Harrison, and George W. Bush all had fewer popular votes but more electoral votes than their opponents.
Most people, I think, can think back to 2000 and the Bush versus Gore election. There was Ralph Nader in the mix who was draining votes away in some cases. Is there always a third party candidate in there that tends to depress the votes of the two frontrunners?
That's often the way it can happen, but sometimes, for example, in 1888, Benjamin Harrison took the northern swing states by very tiny amounts. Grover Cleveland racked up these huge majorities in the South. So even though Cleveland had the most votes, Harrison had the most electoral votes. And something like that almost happened in 2012, where Mitt Romney had large majorities in the South and the Great Plains, and Obama won the northern swing states by 3 and 5%. And if Mitt Romney had done just a little bit better, he could have won the popular vote and still lost the electoral vote.
We're in an election cycle now where we have historically unpopular candidates. I'm wondering, is that a factor when it comes to these kinds of elections where somebody wins the White House but loses the electoral or loses the popular vote? Is their unpopularity personally a part of that?
I don't think so. I think what it comes from is the winner-take-all system that we have. So you can win a swing state by a tiny amount and you get all of that state's votes. That's the distortion. Also, every state has 2 more votes than its population warrants because of the 2 senators in the Senate, and that's another distortion. So in 2000, George Bush won all those Great Plains and Rocky Mountain states, and that's why he got the most electoral votes. In 2012, Barack Obama was winning swing states by small margins.
The subtitle of your book is The Elections That Defined America's Popular Will and How Our Democracy Remains in Danger. What kind of danger are we in?
Because I think the real fluke is not what happened in the year 2000. The real fluke is that after the second place candidate won in 1888, it took 112 years for it to happen again. That was the fluke. A runner-up president is going to come again much sooner than we think. When one candidate is within 3% of the popular vote of another, it happens 3 out of 10 times.
But this is the same system we've used for more than 225 years. I mean, it's sort of baked into how we pick a president. Is it fair to say that it's a danger? I mean, obviously, it's in contrast to the popular will or the total popular vote, but is it really a danger to our democracy?
I think it is. If a Democrat gets fewer popular votes and wins the electoral vote, both parties will have felt cheated by the system. Democrats felt cheated in 2000, Republicans will feel cheated next time, and they might just throw the baby out with the bathwater and have a new ill-advised system that they adopt in a rush. The even bigger danger is if a Republican gets fewer votes and wins the electoral vote a second time. Democrats are going to say, wait a minute, do we live in a democracy? We won 2 elections and we have to put up with these opposition presidents twice.
But you did mention the composition of the House of Representatives, which is done based on population, and the Senate, which is based on individual states being represented. It's something of a hybrid system with the Electoral College because you get the number of representatives and the number of senators combined. Those are the electoral votes for your state. I mean, it seems like that would reflect the overall composite. I mean, it feels like a hybrid of those 2 systems, so wouldn't that be somewhat reflective of the divisions within the United States?
Yes, the electoral system has worked as well as it has and lasted 2 centuries because the 2 extra electoral vote distortion is a distortion that favors the rural states, and the winner-take-all distortion is a distortion that favors the urban states. Usually the 2 distortions balance each other out, but every now and then they don't balance each other out, and that's the danger.
So I know your book talks about some reforms that would still preserve the Electoral College. Give me a couple of ideas of what those reforms would include.
I'd like to see each of the distortions reduced. So instead of having 2 extra electoral votes per state, it would just be 1 extra electoral vote per state. And instead of winner take all, it would be winner takes 1/3, with the other electoral votes divided proportionally in accordance to the popular vote. So in New York, instead of having 29 electoral votes, it would have 28. The winner would take 1/3 of those, rounded off 9, and then the other 19 would be proportion. So typically, instead of New York being 29-0, as it always is in every election, it would be like 21-7 or 20-8. So the second place candidate would get a few electoral votes in every state, which would make the whole system much fairer and much safer.
I can see how smaller, lower populated states might not like your suggestion because it would decrease their influence in the presidential election. But it seems like there's something for every state to dislike.
That's exactly right. The small states actually do just as well or better under my system, because if they go down from 3 votes to 2 votes, that second vote doesn't get divided up. They're still winner-take-all states.
And the book's been on the market for about 4 months now.
Yes.
Any idea if there's any traction for actually trying to get these changes implemented?
Oh, I think the chance of getting changes implemented are infinitesimal in the short term. In the long term, maybe. What I'm hoping right now is just people will get familiar with the idea.
Well, I tell you what, work on the popular vote on that, and we'll see if we can get the electoral votes to change it in Washington.
Yes.
Mark Weston, really appreciate it. Thanks for a few minutes.
Thank you.
And coming up next, we're going to take a look at some local headlines. Please stay with us.